Well, Razorback fans, it's officially that time of week. I'm going to tell you exactly why I hate the Ole Miss Rebels while still wearing my Halloween costume. It's fine. It's coming up on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Neighbors. I'm also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday starting at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. Today, we're sponsored by FanDuel. You can start the season with big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Friday. You finally made it. And yes, I am wearing my Halloween costume because, as those you may not know, I record these normally the day before. And I had my hair was all messed up because of the costume and everything. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to deal with it. They can just get over it. That's all I'll say. They can just get over it. And it's a Shiba because my dog Rowdy is a Shiba. So just don't look at me. Just listen. But still, a lot of things to talk about today. We'll have some reaction to some of the things going on and with the Ty Washington as we had some insight on what went down with that situation of him leaving the team. We'll also look ahead into the SEC and see what's going on this weekend. But this has become quite a hit for people, which I'm happy about. I love it because it's fun. And for those of you Ole Miss fans that are just tuning in and just joining because you saw the title of this, I do this for every team. I want to make that clear. You're not special. I do it for every team and every team that I hate in the SEC, which is everybody. But I will say, though, that being said, this one means a little bit more because Arkansas and Ole Miss have actually had some pretty legendary, epic games, moments, connections, history, however you want to call it. There's been a lot of that over the past really 20 years, maybe even before that, at least as long as I've been alive. There's always been some interesting things that's happened. And they've become a team that in the majority of the sports, but especially football and baseball, that I have really come to hate. And I'll get to in a few reasons. But we'll start with the football side of things because obviously that's the biggest one. Number one reason I hate them is Houston Nutt. Those of you who know me and have listened to me know that I don't like Houston Nutt. I have never liked Houston Nutt. If you do, that's fine. But I remember how angry it made me when all that went down and how he was just allowed to go to a cross-division rival in the Rebels and not owe Arkansas any money and then recruit against Arkansas and really try to make Arkansas look bad and everything like that. It was really frustrating. And I remember the Ole Miss Rebel fan base during that time really coming out and being loud about, well, geez, I mean, why would Arkansas want to fire this coach of 10 years who won the West just 2 years prior and, had the Heisman Trophy finalist and Dermot McFadden, and they wanted to fire this guy? Geez, if he did that at Arkansas, just imagine what he could do at Ole Miss, which was the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Because I'm like, buddy, if you think that the 10 years of Houston Nutt at Arkansas was going to be even better at Ole Miss, you are sorely mistaken. And man, they talked a lot of noise because Houston Nutt walked into there similar to what he did at Arkansas. Took someone else's players. Ed Orgeron recruited really well. He didn't coach very well, but he recruited really well. Took Ed Orgeron's players, won with him, had back-to-back 9-win seasons, back-to-back Cotton Bowls, and then you saw exactly the type of coach he was as it fell off, and it fell off quickly. 4-8 and then 2-10, and Houston Nutt was gone. But I hated the fact that Ole Miss thought that that was a good hire. Two, that they thought that he'd be better at Ole Miss than what he was at Arkansas, and also just the smugginess of Houston Nutt during that whole thing. So really, it starts for me personally with that. Another reason I hate Ole Miss, though, is because of the fact that in so many of these games and some of these matchups, it's really come down to the wire. And I know this is like a drunk rivalry. We've talked about it. We talked about it yesterday with Stephen Willis. But one of the things that I thought was really fascinating when learning more about this series and about these teams and everything was that the games that have usually gone the craziest, more often than not, have gone crazy for Arkansas's sake. And that was pointed out to me by a lovely Ole Miss fan because they were really nice. But, the Hunter Henry heave, the 7 overtime game, Very few times has the Arkansas crazy game, except for maybe that 2022 game, which was wild, has gone in the favor of the Rebels. 2015, 2016 was another one. 2014 was another one. 2017. It was crazy because Arkansas won 4 straight games against Ole Miss during that stretch, and that was it. So as crazy as it's been, it's usually been in the favor of Arkansas as far as the craziness goes, but Ole Miss fans chalk it up to being like, oh, well, that's the only reason you beat Ole Miss is because of crazy stuff like that, which is not true. But that's just another one. Let's get actually into the real juiciness of it all. Another reason I hate Ole Miss is that they can't figure out what mascot they want to be. Okay, a lot of SEC teams are guilty of this, but Ole Miss might be the one that's the most guilty of it all. The Ole Miss Rebels, that's what they are, okay? And they have been that since the beginning. Well, then it started coming out that Colonel Reb, their mascot, wasn't exactly politically correct, and they had to change it. In fact, he was sidelined in 2003 as a sideline mascot. So they sidelined him, and it just always was the Rebels, right? Always the Rebels and everything. Well, then when they took him away, it's like, okay, well, now they're not going to have like an actual logo mascot. They're just going to be the Rebels. Fine. But then after a few years, they're like, we got to figure out who he has as a mascot. And it's like, you don't have to, but sure, okay. 2010, Black Bear. They ended up getting a black bear as their mascot. They tried to get Admiral Akbar from Star Wars, which actually would have been pretty cool. I would have given him a lot of praise and a lot of credit for that, but Lucasfilm wouldn't let them do it. But still, they got a black bear. And that, what does a black bear have to do with Rebels? Why did you have to have a black bear? Why does it have to be something like that? To me, I understand that there's traditions and all that, but I will give this credit about Arkansas. At least they're good and consistent with the branding. It's not like, oh, you're the Razorbacks, but you have a giraffe as your mascot. It's like, no, you got a Razorback as your mascot. The inconsistency there is incredible. So the black bear was lame. Very, very, very lame. And it was so lame that they decided to replace that mascot once again with Tony the Land Shark in 2018. Because anything says Rebels, it's got to be Tony the Land Shark. That looks absurd. I would have put pictures up here, but you can just Google it. I'm not going to give them that credit. Like, it's so dumb. And I think it was, Marshall Henderson doing that stuff, and sometimes they still do it. But it has nothing to do with the Rebels. It has nothing to do with Oxford. It has nothing to do with Ole Miss. It's just, and it's all a problem here because it shows how Ole Miss, they want to be cool, but they don't want to be too cool, but they try to, make something that everybody else has, but then it's inconsistent. The messaging is bad and they can't make up their mind. And it's just all over the place. If you want to be the Rebels, fine, be the Rebels, but call it the Rebel something, do it like that. I think it'd be even more like fitting if you had something that people would be like, okay, well, it's a stretch, but at least that makes sense of being a rebel. Have Kid Rock as your mascot for all I care. But they don't know what they're doing, and they still don't know what they're doing. They still don't know the mascot, and that's stupid. You're a college football program. You're a college sports program. You should be a little bit more consistent, but you're a bunch of idiots that can't figure it out. And finally, this is the final one I'll make. I could go on and on, but I don't have time. This is the final one I'll make. Why I hate Ole Miss. The Grove. The Grove. The Grove has been dubbed by the greatest tailgate in all of the SEC. It's something you have to experience no matter where you go because it's the greatest party in all of the SEC. That's really where the action's at, is in the tailgating of the Grove. Folks, let me tell you something. I'm not sitting here saying Arkansas tailgate is great because it's not. It's fine. But I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, yeah, our tailgating's way above anybody else. No, I'm not going to say that. So this isn't just an Arkansas Ole Miss thing. This is just Ole Miss in general. But the Grove is the most overrated thing that has ever been said about this conference in tradition. Like, when people bring up Death Valley and LSU and how loud and crazy it is at night, that's a real thing. That's a real thing. But when people talk about the Grove and Ole Miss, it's a good tailgating, no doubt about it. But there is nothing special about it. Like, you think that putting a chandelier in your tent makes you special. You're not. That's weird. That's stupid. It's a tailgate. Why you have a chandelier? Is it cool? I don't think so. I don't think it's cool when there's a chandelier in a house. So you think it's going to be cool in the tailgate? It's not. And here's the biggest thing that people may not realize this. Oh, it's the best tailgate, best party, and all this stuff. Do you guys realize, for those of you who haven't been there, that if you walk around with, say if you're bringing a case of beer, just a case of beer, carrying a case of Busch Light, you're walking over to the tailgate. If you would be stopped by the cops because you're not allowed to have that out there, even if you're just carrying it. If you don't believe me, ask the guys at the Buzz because they went through this. The cops will stop you and then take your beers and pour them out in front of you because you don't have them in a solo cup. You cannot, I repeat, you cannot be the greatest party, the best tailgate, and all this stuff if one of the rules are that when you go out there, you can't walk around with a beer can or else it'll get poured out by the cops. That sounds like rules, and rules aren't cool. People want to party and have a good time. And it's also not like this is thing where it's just a major problem. It's simple. Everybody walks around with beers. At the U of A, I mean, you got people in koozies and stuff. You got beers. Who cares? As long as they're not acting fools. But there, it doesn't even matter how you're acting. You could be a perfect gentleman, and they pour out the beers in front of you. You cannot be the greatest tailgate and the best party ever in all the SEC and all history if you're doing that. It just can't happen. That's like saying, oh, we got the best bar on Dixon Street, but we better not see you coming in with any of the vapes or anything of the cigarettes, because then you're banned, and we're going to steal it from you and throw it in the trash. That's not a fun place to be. Nobody wants to do that. I'm not promoting it now. I'm just saying that when you put rules on things, it makes it lame. So I could go on and on. I could have done a whole episode about this, but I can't. I don't have time. So, but still, that's why I hate Ole Miss. You guys suck. I hope we win. Probably won't, but still, there you have it. I want to talk about this Ty Washington situation. We got some updates on that coming up next here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast, so stay with us. All right, folks, I got to tell you about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. We know that Home Field has some of the coolest and latest up-to-date vintage apparel. You Razorback fans out there, we know that the Slobber and Hog just got put back on the court. It's a beautiful thing. Wasn't it beautiful that Friday, just a week ago, seeing that thing on the court against Kansas in that exhibition game? Gave me chills, gave me goosebumps. But the thing about it is not only does it look great on the court, it looks great on a shirt. And at homefieldapparel.com, they have all different types of apparel featuring the Slobber Hog. They also have the Hog running through the A, the Hog leaning on the A. They have so many different vintage logos to choose from, all in apparel, and it's all high-quality stuff. The shirts fit incredible. They have different options, different sizes, and it's for everybody. So check it out today and get your great vintage apparel there for the Razorbacks at homefieldapparel.com. That's homefieldapparel.com. Use my promo code PIG24, PIG24, and you'll be able to see all that they have to offer for you. Again, go to homefieldapparel.com. We are also, of course, brought to by our friends of 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. And it takes a lot of energy to power through all day of the tailgates, you Grove people down there, the touchdown celebrations, as well as an agonizing overtime, which hopefully that doesn't happen this weekend. Which is why they've created, though, the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel. The energy shot made just for super fans like all of us. The fans who are first in the parking lot and who are the last to leave, we see you. For your tailgates that start at first light like my tailgate does, this is exactly what's built for us right here. But you know what else gives me a bit of Razorback fans fuel this week? That's that moment whenever Arkansas and Ole Miss play each other, because I talk about it being the drunkest game of all time. It is. It's phenomenal. It's fantastic. I hope Arkansas wins. I don't think they will, but I hope they will. And it's going to be drunk. It's going to be wild. It's going to be crazy. And you're going to need the energy to get through it all, especially for those of you who are maybe in for the long haul, because who knows what's going to happen as far as 7 overtimes. Ring a bell? Anybody? But still, you're going to need 5 Hour Energy. And 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long, and that's why the limited edition Stand the Fan at 5 Hour Energy drink is here. So keep you fueled throughout the entire season with the 5-hour energy shot for Stan the Fan. What's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with 5-hour energy, available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Okay, so I wanted to bring up this story, and this is a very sensitive story about Ty Washington. I talked about it a couple days ago on the podcast, and we've learned a little bit more from the situation with Ty Washington. He went on the podcast of 4th and 5 with DJ Williams, former Razorback tight end, and there was some interesting things that came from it because, as we always talk about, there's two sides to every story. You know, there was a time where it was always hard to get the right story, and, you know, I understand coaches just want to, you know, be the way they want to be and keep everything close to the chest, and I respect that and I understand that. But apparently, this is something that happened at the Mississippi State game. It had had some other instances before, but actually happened at the Mississippi State game. Just a few things that came from it. It says, this is just an article written for on SI.com about it. Apparently, it says that Arkansas tight end Ty Washington was glad to hear his head coach was able to speak with him. He wanted a chance to explain himself as his recent actions and ask for help for mental health situation he'd been trying to get someone to listen to him about for a couple of days. However, the meeting didn't go as planned because Sam Pittman, who sat before him, wasn't the same man he had known for the previous 3 years, as according to him. Pittman had already made an executive decision, and as Washington described, the scene played out, and now former head coach was served and clear who was in charge. He said, "You're off the team." Pittman just said very bluntly. Well, once they sat down for the podcast, it says when the Arkansas coaches went to Washington to give him his chance to be a piece of the action in the game against Mississippi State, where the scoreboard was dominated by tight ends, the now former Razorback totally flat told his coach, "No, I'm not going in." He said he decided he wasn't going in and he wasn't feeling it. He said, quote, "I said I'm not going in, and I spoke to the player development guy and told him I'm not okay and I need counseling. He told me to try to work it out and fight through it on the field and go back into the game, and then we'll talk about it on Monday at the meetings and stuff. I went and told the coaches I'm okay to go in, but I'm not okay mentally. But if you need me, I'm here." But apparently, it says there's another reason why Washington didn't want to be on the field despite being desperate for an opportunity. The previous week against LSU, he was concerned about the tape he might put out if he went in and didn't perform his best. He says, quote, "To be honest, I didn't think I needed to go in and fight through something and look bad or mess up the team in general when I'm already going through something mentally." So he kind of went through that. You know, this is a tough situation. And again, two sides to every story. I don't know if we'll ever get Pittman's side of the story or how it all played out or anything like that. But apparently, as the interview went on, Washington felt like he saw the garbage time that they were trying to put him in, said and put him so late into the game, it was an insult. And so with that, and also the stuff he was going through and how his grandmother was in hospice and everything, it was all kind of playing on his feelings a little bit. So here's the thing. I'm not taking a side in this because I don't think it's appropriate to take a side. If you have your opinion on the matter, that's fine. But here's my thought process on it. I understand Sam Pittman and the situation he's in. You're a football coach. You got 85 plus guys on your team, on your squad. You're trying to keep it all together and you're trying to make it work. You're trying to make this season work. And trying to keep everybody happy in the NIL world especially is a lot more difficult. But Sam Pittman, this is his fight for his life. This is his fight for his job and his career this year. I mean, it's important. You can't mess around. You can't take risks. You have to get the job done. And so I'm sure that this wasn't just a one-time thing. I will go ahead and put out that assumption. I don't think that Washington was just, there was never any issues. And then this one game, he said, I don't want to go in. And then Pittman's like, you're off the team. There was more to it than that. But if you're Sam Pittman, you're like, hey, I gotta win. We got to win. And if we call on a guy to go in the game and he says, I'm not going in, then we're not dealing with this right now, especially if there's been previous issues. So I understand why Sam Pittman did what he did and taking him off the team. You got too many guys to count on. You don't want any problems, especially when locker room problems have been an issue in the past. And so you can't take a risk, and I understand it. But I also have sympathy for Ty Washington, because assuming that what he says is true, and I don't think there's any reason to believe otherwise, we sometimes just get over the top in thinking that, okay, all college athletes, especially ones that are getting paid in the NIL era, they should just deal with it. And I don't think that's the case. I'm not somebody that just feels like every single little thing that you go through in life, or anytime that you get your feelings hurt or get in your feelings, then everybody needs to stop what they're doing and try to coddle you. Like, I don't believe that. But I also don't believe in just every single time someone's going through something to say, hey, toughen up and get over it. There can be a middle ground there. And the college kids these days, with the amount of, like, when it comes to schooling, staying up with the grades, staying up with practices, trying to stay healthy, and then you throw in, playing time or lack thereof, and, maybe some confusion there. And, there's just so many things to consider of what's going on. Then you add in the personal life, what it looks like with Ty Washington and his grandma and everything like that. It can become pretty overbearing, especially for a 20, 21-year-old kid. It can really, really become a lot, and people handle their grief and handle those things different ways. I don't think Ty Washington handled it the best way, but at the same time, I don't blame him for handling it that way either. It's a tough situation for anybody to be in, and for any of us to understand is pretty tough too. But I wish the best for him. I really do. I hope whatever grief that he has, it's able to have some peace with it. I hope he gets himself figured out, and I hope he finds a way to move forward. But it's just tough, man. It's just tough. So hopefully people can at least be respectful of that. It's not going to have a major impact on Arkansas's football season, him not being on the team. And, you can still be all right. Arkansas's got a lot of fish to fry, and they got Ole Miss coming up. But hopefully Ty Washington's able to get through whatever he's going through right now. That's for sure. We'll look around the SEC and why this weekend sucks here in just a second. So stay with us on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, folks, get ready to tackle your NFL action this year with FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can get $5. Just bet $5, and you get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, and get on the same page where you get all your bets too. So just visit FanDuel.com today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you're winning your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch, and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so moving on into the final segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I'm going to kind of do a little rant here for the SEC and scheduling and TV and stuff. This weekend sucks. And I don't know how this continues to happen. I understand it a little bit, at least in the beginning parts of the season, the beginning games of the season. If there are issues, like I totally understand it. But I also just don't understand how even before the season started, here going into week 10, you're like, yep, these are the games we're going to throw up there. Arkansas and Ole Miss might be the best game of the weekend. Truly. Not to say that there won't be some intrigue in some others, but it truly might be the best game of the season. And you never know how teams are going to perform, because some teams have been disappointing and some teams have been better what you thought. But you got Vanderbilt and Auburn. Okay, I don't care what anybody says. Before the season started, that was not a good game. Nobody was saying that was a good game. So that's terrible. You got Maine and Oklahoma. UMass and Mississippi State. Gross. But then you got Florida and Georgia, which is the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. And it's historical for sure. But even before the season started, Florida wasn't supposed to be good. And if that's the best game, okay. But then you got A&M and South Carolina. It's not a good game now, and A&M is really good, but I just don't know why that was picked. And then finally, Kentucky, Tennessee. Kentucky has definitely been disappointing, and Tennessee's been right about where they were supposed to be, but that doesn't do anything for me. So I just don't understand, like, who makes these schedules and how there's not at least one. I know I would say more than one. There's not at least two marquee matchups of SEC play. This is bad. And I don't know how it keeps happening like this. It's just really frustrating and it's dumb. But what do I know? I don't know anything about scheduling. I just know about disappointment. That's all I care about. That's all I know, at least. Either way, appreciate all of you listening in and watching in to the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Neighbors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have, and we'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel. Next Monday, have a great weekend, everybody. We'll see you then.